Hi, this is Les and Amy from the Rev Genetics podcast. You can listen to the podcast on YouTube and now on Spotify, where we do a deep dive on supplements and longevity studies.
It is great to be back. And today we are looking at a brand new study. This is from 2026 by Laura Gigalia that I think is going to completely change how you think about your skeleton.
I have to admit, I usually try not to think about my skeleton, but this one really grabbed me. The idea that, well, we all thought that as we get older, all our cells just get tired. They just sort of quit.
Right.
But this study found a secret squad of cells inside our bones that basically refuse to get old.
That's it, exactly. It sort of challenges that whole wear and tear idea of aging. This study found these specific stem cells that just keep going. While the rest of the body is, slowing down, they stay young.
So they just ignore all the damage.
They ignore it, and
Yeah.
they keep repairing tissue just like they did when we were in our 20s.
That sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, like
Yeah.
a secret reserve of youth hiding in our bone marrow.
It sounds like it, I know, but the data is very, very real. So our mission today is to break down what these cells are, how they pull off this magic trick, and what it could mean for, things like brittle bones down the line.
Okay, let's get into it. Because most of us, I think, have this vague idea of why bones get weak with age, but I'm guessing it's more complicated. So what's the real problem we're trying to solve here?
Well, to get the solution, you first have to picture a construction site. Our bones are constantly being rebuilt by this whole team of cells.
Like little construction workers for the body.
Exactly. Little workers with hard hats and blueprints. In a young person, this crew is, well, they're super energetic. They look at the blueprints, they see build bone, and they get to work.
Laying down steel beams, concrete, all that stuff.
That's right. And that's what keeps your skeleton strong. But as we age, that construction crew starts to change.
I'm guessing they get a bit tired.
They get more than tired. A lot of them just stop working entirely. They don't even leave the site. They just, sit down in the break room and refuse to do anything.
The lazy workers.
We call them zombies. In science, it's a real term, senescence. They stop building, but what's worse is they start causing trouble. They're shouting, throwing things around, distracting the few workers who are still trying to do their jobs.
So the whole job site just becomes toxic.
And it gets worse. The workers who are still on the job, they get confused. Their eyesight gets bad. They can't read the blueprints anymore.
So they rebuild bone, but they do something else.
Exactly. Instead of building hard, strong bone, they start building fat.
Wait, what? Fat inside the bone.
Yes. They start filling all the empty space with this soft yellow fat instead of hard structural bone. It's like, imagine replacing the steel beams of a skyscraper with blocks of butter.
That is a terrifying image. So my skeleton is literally turning into butter.
In a way, yeah. That's why older bones can break so easily. It's not just that there's less bone, it's that what's there has been replaced by fat.
Wow. Okay, so for a long time, we just thought this was inevitable, that every worker on the site was doomed to become a zombie or a butter builder.
That was the thinking. It seemed pretty hopeless, but this new study, it says maybe not everyone on the crew gives up.
This is where the secret squad comes in.
Yes, this is the huge discovery. Researchers used some really advanced tech to look at the cells one by one, and they found this small elite team hiding in the crowd. They call them SRCs.
The master craftsmen.
Perfect way to put it. Even in a really old body, surrounded by all the zombies and the confused workers, these SRCs are still going. They're reading the blueprints perfectly.
So they never get confused. They don't start building the better walls.
Never. They are 100% committed to building bone. They just ignore the chaos. And when they counted them, they found that while the normal workers dropped by like 60% with age, this elite team, their numbers only drop a tiny bit.
So they're survivors. Rare, but tough.
Incredibly tough. And here's the craziest part. They took these elite cells from old mice, grandpa mice.
Right.
And they moved them into other mice that had holes in their skulls.
Okay, so broken heads, basically.
Defects, yeah, that needed to heal. And they compared what happened to mice that got the regular, tired old worker cells.
Let me guess. The elite team did a better job.
A much better job. The mice that got the SRCs grew almost 3 times as much new bone.
3 times?
It's
Too serious.
2.8 times, to be exact. And it was good, strong bone. The other mice, the ones that got the regular old cells, they barely healed at all.
That's just incredible. So an old cell can still do a young cell's job.
And it didn't even stop there. They also injected these SRCs into the bloodstream of mice with osteoporosis, weak bones all over.
So not even directly on the bone, just into the blood.
Right. And the cells, they knew exactly where to go. They traveled to the bones and just started repairing the structure. The bone got stronger. And this is the key part, the amount of fat inside the bone went down.
They actually reversed the butterbone problem.
They did. It shows that our bodies still have this hidden capacity to repair, even in old age. We just need to find these super workers.
That is such a hopeful idea.
Yeah.
It's fantastic to have Rev Genetics powering this deep dive.
It really is. Rev Genetics has been dedicated to investigating evidence-based natural compounds for aging research for years now.
And what's so interesting is how their focus on science really lines up with what we're talking about today.
Exactly. I mean, the study reveals that these secret squad SRC cells stay young because they have these supercharged antioxidant defenses, specifically a pathway called NRF2 and better DNA repair. Supporting pathways like NRF2 is exactly the kind of science-first approach researchers and Rev Genetics look at to understand healthy aging.
Okay, so we know these elite cells exist. We know they can fix bones, at least in mice. But let's talk about the future. What does this mean for us? Can we actually cure osteoporosis with this?
This is where it gets really exciting. The study basically points toward two main paths forward. The first one is something we call augmentation.
Augmentation. That sounds very sci-fi. Like we're upgrading our bodies.
It kind of is. Imagine you go to the doctor at, say, age 60. They take a tiny sample of your bone marrow.
Okay.
Then in a lab, they filter out all the zombies, all the confused fat builders, and they just keep that elite SRC team.
They separate the good workers from the bad ones.
Exactly. Then they grow those elite cells in a dish until they have millions of them. And then if you break a hip or your bone density is low, they inject those millions of your own super workers right back into you.
So I'm being healed by my own cells, but just the A-team.
Your own personal A-team. It's using your biology, just concentrated. You're not adding a foreign drug. You're just boosting your own hidden reserves.
That sounds amazing, but I'm guessing it might also be expensive. Growing cells in a lab seems complicated. Is there an easier way?
Well, there is a second path, and this one might be more accessible for everyone. It's called mimicry.
Mimicry as in copying them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Remember how we said these elite cells stay young because they have that special NRF2 engine running all the time?
Right, their secret weapon.
Well, scientists are thinking, what if we don't need to transplant the cells themselves? What if we can just figure out how to turn that engine on in the regular workers?
Oh, I get it. So instead of firing the lazy construction crew, we just give them better tools and a really, really strong cup of coffee.
That's the perfect analogy. You give them a medicine, probably a pill, that mimics what the elite team does naturally. It wakes up that NRF2 pathway in the tired cells and says, hey, clean up the rust, look at the blueprints again, and for goodness sake, stop building fat.
We just retrain the existing workforce.
We call these xenomorphics. It's a huge new area of research. Instead of killing the old cells, you try to make them act young again. If that works, you could treat osteoporosis with a pill, not an infusion.
That feels huge. And honestly, does this stop at bones? If we have a secret squad in our skeleton, do we have one in our heart, our brain?
The authors of the study think so. They suspect this might be a universal system. There are probably resilient, elite cells in your muscles keeping you strong, in your cartilage.
It totally changes how you think about getting older.
It really does. We used to look at an organ and say, well, the liver is 70 years old, so it's just old. Now, we might have to say the liver is 70, but maybe 5% of it is still 25.
5% of it is still 25. I love that.
And if we can fan those little sparks of youth, either by adding more of them or just by copying their tricks, we might be able to rejuvenate tissues all over the body.
Okay, I have to be the skeptic for a second. This was a mouse study.
Yeah.
And mice aren't people. What are the risks here? What could go wrong?
You're absolutely right to be cautious. The biggest risk is always safety. When you take these superactive stem cells and inject them, you have to be 100% sure they know when to stop working.
Right. You don't want them to just keep building bone forever.
Exactly. You don't want bone growing where it shouldn't be, and you definitely have to watch out for any risk of cancer. High activity can sometimes lead to losing control.
We need to make sure the construction crew knows when to clock out for the day.
We do. The good news is the study showed these SRCs have incredible DNA repair systems. So they're actually much safer than normal cells because they fix their own mistakes so well. But yes, we need to test this in humans for a long, long time to be sure.
Still, it just feels like such a massive shift in thinking.
It is. We're moving away from aging as just an inevitable decline and more towards aging as a manageable process. And we have these hidden reserves we just haven't learned how to use yet.
Hidden reserves. You know, it makes me feel a little better about my own age and bones, just knowing there's a secret squad in there still fighting the good fight.
They're holding the line for you.
We hope you found today's discussion interesting.
Thank you for listening to the Rev Genetics podcast.
RevGenetics.com for the best longevity supplements on Earth.